I think emotions are like pieces of gold, precious metals, treasure, because our emotions can point to where there is something that's still in there that's asking for us to look at it.
Mm.
And so there's going to be obviously a range of people listening to this, that some don't really feel too many emotions and they feel like pretty balanced and going through life. And there's some people that are going to be like so emotional right now. And I mean, I know I've been there myself sometimes in life, right? And so if you're listening to this and you're going through different emotions in your life right now, maybe it feels like up and down and every day just feels like something slightly different, or you're tired of being on the ride.
Mm.
I'd say, oh my gosh, you are sitting in front of a pile of treasure that is asking for your attention. And they want you to sit there and ask the questions and lean in. And your greatest liberation that you may ever feel in your life comes on the other side of picking up that treasure and working with it.
Hello and welcome. I'm Meredith McCarthy, a clinical hypnotherapist here in Wellington, New Zealand. I love talking about anything to do with hypnosis, but today we have a very different type of guest. Her name is Dellisa Hocking. She's actually a fifth generation medium and also coach. And I thought that would be quite an interesting conversation to have with her around intuition and how that weaves in to her coaching process and how she helps others discover that intuition within themselves, to empower them, to supercharge them. So buckle up. I hope you enjoy today's talk time. So, hi, welcome, Delisa. Nice to have you on the talk time today. We've got lots to talk about. So, where would you like to begin?
Yeah, I think I'd like to start with a story about something that happened to me recently. I
Excellent.
yeah, I've been making predictions for, over a decade. It's been what I've been known for, and have quite a fun, engaged social media audience. And oh gosh, not so long ago, I was sitting at home and I got this overwhelming sense that my work was going to change and that it was pivoting into less about the sharing and having an audience consume predictive content, but instead shifting into what I received as the message was the activation phase. And that now we are in this period of time where consuming information isn't enough. And we're really being asked to go within ourselves and do the inner work that many of us have talked about for so long, with the embodiment piece and mindset shift. But I wasn't expecting it, which might sound really ironic coming from a psychic medium. But I sat and listened. It came over a period of a weekend where I just kept getting layer and layer about this is the new direction. And it's been quite interesting to sit with that and ask myself, well, now what do I do about this? I've always aimed over the years to leave people, clients, students better than how they came to me. But now I feel like I'm really supposed to stand next to people and shine a flashlight into a dark cave and help them walk through it, but not carry it for them. And I think it's important to note that because it reminds me of an epiphany that I had several years ago, which was the drama triangle, the rescuer victim relationship dynamic. For many, many years, I was meeting with all kinds of clients from all over, and I really thought I was helping them. And it wasn't until I really got these downloads recently where I realized that although I was coming at it from an angle of I want to help people, what I'm recognizing now is that the information that I would share, mostly predictions, that can lead people into a space of not going within for their own answers, not finding their own clarity, not doing their own work. And so I'd find myself again in the middle of a drama triangle because I had done this work years ago in recognizing the rescuer victim energy flow between those two roles.
Mm.
And here I am again, all these years later. I'm like, wait a second, it's still here. The predictions, are they really helping people? And in sitting with this recently, I find it's like another layer of my own onion that I'm having to look at and peel away of like, I don't want to be a rescuer. I
Mm.
don't want to necessarily work with people that are in an active victim energy. And we all know somebody in our life that is a victim energy or, everything is going wrong or, they complain about this, they complain about that. And life is always like just hammering down on them. I don't feel like that's the lane that I really want to work in. I would much rather empower you to have your own clarity, have your own intuitive nudges, be able to walk through life feeling, much more confident about who you are and what you want to achieve.
Mm.
And so that's been kind of my recent shift and transition. And I love it. I love that I get to now lead with more curiosity than I do voicing the predictions that come through. I love asking people questions. And sometimes I do that, in a group setting or if I'm doing group coaching. But every week I put out a new episode. Well, it's a short, like 60-second once a week where I ask you a question.
Mm.
And all I want you to do is sit with that question that week and think about it. So, for example, one of the recent ones that I put out is what is draining you? What are you still carrying that you know that you're not meant to carry any longer?
Mm.
And the question is aimed to get us to sit and really think about what it is. And then also once a week, I have another short video that comes out. It's called Books That Shift Us. And it's where I talk about a self help style book and what we can learn from it. And I love books, and I know a lot of people enjoy reading content that helps inspire them or helps to teach them something about themselves. And so my content these days is actually shifting more so into the arena of curiosity and getting us to sit and ask ourselves our own questions long enough for us to get an answer.
Self-reflection is a big part of the coaching process with people. And I do my best to share with my students the importance of asking really good questions, because that elicits space for the client to work it out. Because I do believe, I'm a great believer, that the client has the answer. And that as a soul, we're here on earth with our own ability to make choices and our own ability to understand what the soul path is. And quite often we might perceive a situation as being wrong and right, good and bad, but actually on a bigger universal level, there is no such thing. It's just different. It's we're choosing this path to have an experience, to grow, to learn, in our kind of full let's say, experience of what we see, what we hear, what we touch, what we smell and taste, like through all of our senses. And I think when people go and seek help with a psychic medium, they're often wanting comfort. Am I on the right path? Is this person the right for me? But when they do that, I think they may accidentally then be not really tuning in properly. So it's nice to hear that you're sort of becoming aware of how maybe to change how you're working with people. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, even my work these days, I still like incorporating in prophecy and things that I, am receiving. But I think just the acknowledgement of having this shift within myself, I just approach it differently now. It's if I'm going to give you a piece of information, then you better believe there's going to be some journaling prompts, some affirmations, maybe some crystals or some archangels to work with. So there's an example I'm thinking of right now of one question thing that I do pretty regularly. And instead of just being like, here's the answer, no, here's a whole guide that I want you to work with for 30 days. And here's a 7-day plan that I want you to try out. And so it's much more putting it back on the person, because if I'm getting really, really deep within myself and I look back at this last decade plus of doing this work, I wasn't aware of it. But I think that by me helping people, by making these predictions for their own lives, I saw it as like a service to them, like I'm helping them. And, now, yes, it feels disempowering in a way, but I also feel like deep down, I was looking for some sense of approval. I was looking to feel worthy, to be good enough. Like, wow, if all of these people are coming to me for information, like I'm good enough. I'm doing something right. And now all these years later, in hindsight, you just kind of cringe sometimes, the journey that at least I do for, what I've gone through, but not in a bad way. Just like, oh, I can't believe I couldn't see that back then. But I think that's the beauty in the journey, is that we can't see it when we're in it necessarily. We have to wait until we're far enough out and far enough removed from it where we can see what our different choices, how they were showing up in life, how they were rippling out
Mm.
to those around us or to our business or to our friends or our family. But we often don't see it when we're right in the middle of it. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I feel in the same way, I'm recognizing this thing I've been doing for so long. But I would congratulate anybody that is getting that sense, because I'd much rather have individuals that are getting curious, like you were saying about the coaching, and getting clear about who they are and what really they value and what they want to do with their life and their mission and their voice.
Mm.
I'd rather have that than, somebody sliding into home base when they're 90 years old going, well, I don't know what the heck that was or what I just did, but hey, that was fun. I like some purpose, some meat to it. So it's better to have reflection at some point than reflection at no time.
Absolutely. It's amazing actually how many older people come in 70s, 80s, and they've been struggling with their own interpersonal relationships, and maybe they've had misunderstandings of where they've come from, and their children don't like them much, and they're feeling that burden of guilt or that feeling of I did it wrong, and all sorts of things like that. So I think, when people come and seek help, often it's coming from a discomfort. Something's rumbling, and it gets louder and louder and louder and louder. And I think in the busyness of life, a lot of people just park that, go, okay, no, it's too hard, too complicated. I won't deal with that right now. But eventually it catches up. And I think it's important that we have some level of practice of self-reflection, which I quite like meditation, because it helps to bring someone home, to come home and just notice, am I really busy? Or am I able to come into sort of that stillness? Okay, what's disturbing the force? And I think when people do practice like that, they become more aware of, okay, there's a nagging loop that I'm becoming aware of that's tapping me. What's that about? And that's where journaling and other coaching processes can be really useful for people to start that self-reflection properly.
I agree. There's something that comes to mind I'd love to share as you're speaking about this because it's something I learned years ago that I still apply to this day that has been one of the biggest things I could point to for shifting my own awareness because there might be people listening to this who are like, yeah, that's great that I should be like self-aware and ask questions, but like where do I start? I love the idea of guided meditation. I take either some kind of form of a spiritual class or meditation every night before I go to sleep. But there are some people that are like, well, I don't know if I want to try that or can my mind hold steady enough? And yes, you can. It just takes some practice. But I like to notice what I'm feeling. So, whatever the emotion is. And some of us are better or have more practice at like naming the emotion, but leaning into it a bit more like, what am I feeling? And try to describe it as best you can. And then a mentor shared this with me that you can then trace that emotion back to one, two, or three of these core energies that I'm going to share. And when you start getting curious about this, and let's say you're angry and you're like, oh, why am I so angry? And you think about these three core energies, then you can start to just acknowledge it, see it for what it is. And even just the seeing it, the act of acknowledging it or hearing it, often will help it dissolve so much more than we can do just by trying to smush it down.
Mm.
And the more you get practice with this, the easier it gets. So, the three core energies. Number one is the energy of approval. So I'm upset about something, and it's because I either feel like I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough, somebody's like smushing me down, I don't feel confident. So approval is the core energy number one. Core energy number two is there's something about this that's bothering me because I don't feel safe. So safety is number two. And then the third one is, oh, I really want to be in control right now, but I'm not. So control is the third energy. And frankly, in all my years of using this, approval and control are the two key ones that normally come up quite a bit. And sometimes it's both. And I'd say safety is usually like the one that comes in third place in terms of how often they show up. So, give you an example. A lot of people drive and they have to drive to and from work, or they have a commute that they have to do where there's a lot of traffic. So, if you're somebody that gets really like tense, or maybe shouting, or maybe using your middle finger at someone as you're driving down the road, which one of those would it be? Approval, safety, or control? And so, as you're sitting behind the steering wheel, if you're really just asking yourself that question and leaning into it, the curiosity will probably lead you to the energy of control
Mm.
because I want the road to be clearer. I don't want that person to cut me off. Who are they to get in front of me? Right. So it's that control that starts the monster, the energy that starts getting bigger and bigger. But I think people will be really surprised at how often approval comes in. Like once
Mm.
they really start and think about it and apply it to their own life, and something maybe even right now today, listening to this, that is kind of under their skin and they want to know why it's bothering them. This is the key to unlocking all of it and giving you the answers. So once you figure it out, which one, two, or even if it's all three in some rare cases, you then give it to yourself.
Mm.
So I'll paint this in a clear framework. So if you've discovered like, oh gosh, I just don't feel lovable in this moment, it's really bothering me. Okay, well then you're going to give approval to yourself. You're going to
Mm.
use some positive affirmations. You're going to tell yourself how amazing, how wonderful, how beautiful you are. Whatever the feeling is that's kind of rumbling underneath that surface. So give love and approval to yourself and feel it. If you are being triggered by safety and you don't feel safe for some reason, you can go and close your eyes and take yourself back to a memory where you felt really safe, like you felt really comfortable and secure. And then, same for control. If control is coming in and you're that person behind the wheel, you would give the energy or the mindset of flow to yourself, because you're not going to give yourself more control,
Mm,
but you want to give yourself, you could close your eyes if, in the middle of the road, it might be hard, but you could just kind of gaze off like a daydream and
mm,
think of a memory of when you really felt just like life was in flow and things are working out for you, and take yourself into that memory. And that will help to dissipate the energy of control. But approval, safety, and control changed my whole life. And I have found the biggest level of liberation for me has come by owning all of my emotions and
mm,
getting curious about them and understanding where they came from. Because you could take it an even, further step where, okay, you've figured out which one of the three core energies it is, and you've called it out, you've given yourself the anecdote for it. But if you really wanted to, you could take another step towards that energy. Let's say it's approval.
mm,
You're like, wow, I can't believe my friends didn't invite me to that dinner that they planned. I feel like really angry. And then you sit with it and you're like, oh, it's because I feel left out. I feel like maybe there's something about me they're not approving of or they don't like about me. And that's why I didn't get invited to the dinner. And if you sat with that and you give yourself the self love, then you could lean into it a little bit further and go, okay, well, I feel really left out. Is there another time in my life where I felt like I wasn't included or I felt like I didn't belong? Could I journal about that? Could I
mm,
write about that experience and what it felt like? Because more often than not, anytime I see emotions in myself or I see them in other people, it's never about the thing. It's never about the traffic you're stuck in. It's never about that dinner you didn't get invited to. There is something underneath it that goes back further, that is still an adjutant in your energy field or in your body or in your heart, however you want to articulate it, that's getting activated again. And
mm.
it will continue to activate you until you heal it.
That brings me to that idea of what wires together, fires together. And so when we think about all of our versions of ourselves throughout our timeline of experience, our brain is becoming conditioned to recognize a pattern. Okay. And that pattern has anchored a strong emotion to it because it was important to remember. So then, of course, when we have a matched that pattern, and the emotion emerges that's the same as what it was then and all those other moments in time, it often compounds and it makes it bigger and bigger and bigger. So the first time we went through it may not have been a big deal, or we might not have registered it actually as being much. But then if it happens again, then our brain goes, this could be not so great, and it doesn't feel good again. And then of course we might build a belief, I'm not good enough, from that number of examples where we feel not good enough. So, of course, the self-approval, I should say, self-approval is most important because we don't have a remote control over others remembering to go, you're amazing. So I often talk to my clients about being your own inner best friend. You've got to go, ta-da, yes, that went well. And that's a big part of, winning on the inside, because as we get older, we get less and less often positive praise, and we get more and more criticism, or maybe even silence. We get no feedback at all. So we're left to our, let's say, mind worrying about how people might think about us and badly mind reading something. When we look at that idea of the effect bridge you were describing as going back to a resourceful memory of a time when you felt good. And when we dial that up, we release the same neuropathways and hormones that belong to that. So it's like juicing yourself up through time. Like you can go back to a resourceful memory just as effective as when you get triggered into a negative zone. So what are we doing? We're dialing up into that negative memory often, or at least the echo of the feeling of it. So we might not consciously always remember all of those times we're feeling them. So I think when we do journaling, it can often jog our memory to see where those significant events are connected. And I think that helps then our cognitive mind, our visual cortex, start to process and make understanding of the pattern and how it's affected us. And then once we do that, we can begin to release from that pattern. We either go, okay, I can continue being a victim to that, or I can move beyond that, you know?
Mm-hmm. I do. Yeah. And I love all those points you just made. And you just gave people, that choice of, do I want to heal this and move forward, or do I want to stay in like the circling of the victim kind of mindset or energy? And it goes back to what I was saying earlier about how there are a lot of people that are in victim energy, and there probably are going to be a bunch of them who would never self-identify as a victim energy, but they're that's how they're moving through life. And so I don't use that label as something derogatory. Instead, it's like, maybe you have an element of this that is activated, that, just like you said, it's still there, and you take yourself back into those memories sometimes, and it's activated and it bubbles up. And I think that our emotions can sometimes keep us trapped and really filter the life that we have and the relationships that we have, until we go back in there and tackle it and look at it and heal it. Because then those different memories or things that have happened to us are no longer in the driver's seat. But if we never look at them or sit down long enough to even get curious about where the heck this is stemming from, then it's probably going to be a narrator in the deep mind that's just running your life, and you're not
Mm,
even aware of it. And so I think emotions are like pieces of gold, precious metals, treasure, because our emotions can point to where there is something that's still in there that's asking for us to look at it.
mm,
And so there's going to be obviously a range of people listening to this, that some don't really feel too many emotions and they feel like pretty balanced and going through life. And there's some people that are going to be like so emotional right now. And I mean, I know I've been there myself sometimes in life, right? And so if you're listening to this and you're going through different emotions in your life right now, maybe it feels like up and down, and every day just feels like something slightly different, or you're tired of being on the ride,
mm,
I'd say, oh my gosh, you are sitting in front of a pile of treasure that is asking for your attention. And they want you to sit there and ask the questions and lean in. And your greatest liberation that you may ever feel in your life comes on the other side of picking up that treasure and working with it.
yeah. I think some people might go, treasure, what do you mean? And I sort of say it's wisdom. You know, if every single thing that has happened to you, most times, if we really look back at our timeline of experience, the best lessons, the best upgrades were the toughest times. They helped us to stop, look, and listen, do an audit and an edit at some level, and upgrade. You know, we got really clear about what we don't like, so we can get more and more about, how do I get what I want? How do I move towards that place? So yes, those strong emotions are what makes life viscerally real as well. Like, we're not meant to be going through without any strong emotion. That is the juice of life itself, is to feel the feelings, regardless of whether they're from one spectrum to another, you know?
Yes, absolutely. It's giving us permission just to be who we are, and to allow ourselves to have the highs of joy and feeling really aligned with why we're alive, and maybe our deeper purpose that we feel called to. And yes, there will be times in our lives for each and every one of us where it takes us down into these dark caves. And I would encourage anybody going through that, reach out to someone that you trust, or reach out to a teacher or a coach or some kind of guide that can help you sort through it, because it can sometimes feel in those deeper emotions, those denser ones, that you're in a cave by yourself and it's dark and you can't figure out which way is up or out.
Yeah.
But if you have someone standing there next to you, kind of reflecting even back to you what's happening or what you're saying, or holding up that mirror to what you're explaining as the things that you're going through, that can help unlock new doorways and new perspective shifts to help you think about your life differently and where you ultimately want to go. We don't have to be stuck in any emotion that we don't want to be in. But if we are in one right now that feels like it's somewhat or all consuming,
Mm.
then it could be worth you reaching out to someone to help you sort through it and move through it. And some people ultimately like, more holistic or more of like a life coach, or some people may want to go a route of like a therapist. Whatever feels right to you, I would much rather say to somebody, just go get help and whatever, aligns for you, rather than try to make it fit into a formula of what they might need or based on what other people have tried. I believe that the teacher appears when the student is ready.
Yes.
And this might be the conversation we're having today that lights somebody up to go, okay, I've been waiting long enough. I've been trying this on my own long enough. And I've
Mm.
only gotten as far as I think I can get. And now I'm ready for someone else to help show me the rest of the way.
Yeah. People externally can often see a blind spot, uh, because when you're in it, you're just in it. And so when you go to an external supporter, whether it's a good friend or it is a professional of some kind, they are able often to ask you questions and help you to reflect in a way that you might miss yourself. And yeah, I think seeking support or getting guidance at some points in your life, it doesn't have to be forever and ever, that this is another thing. Sometimes it's those little curly moments that you just think, I think I need a bigger team than me to journey through this moment.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to say that it's not where you're going to sit down for one day and work on it for 8 to 10 hours and then everything magically like sorts itself out. But you might find on some days more inspired to do more journaling or do more meditation or go on a silent walk in nature and see what comes up for you.
Mm.
But usually, in my experience, I've seen it where people will take 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes, and some will even put it on their calendar, color coded on the calendar, where it's their time that they are doing the journaling or the meditating, for example.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because if we don't put it on our calendar and make it a priority for ourselves, we probably won't do it. And then
Mm.
we'll let everyone else and everything else become more important than our
Mm.
own inner workings. And so if it makes sense that you need to color code it like I do on my own calendar, then try that. But I think it can be approachable. I think it can be 10 to 15 minutes a day. And then on other days where you really feel like you're cracking something open and you want to keep going with it and you have the time and space, great, go for it. But I think sometimes we can get really overwhelmed because we think that it has to look or be a certain way, or we have to say to somebody else and our friend or a family, oh, yeah, I do this and this for this much amount of time each week. And
Mm.
I would just kind of throw that all out the window. I'd much rather you show up 10 minutes a day for yourself every single day and be consistent with that practice than try to prove a point by doing it longer, or just so you feel like you're more accomplished doing it for a longer period of time. I'd rather them not burn out and not want to give up. But 10, 15 minutes, it's such a small amount of time, but it can be incredibly helpful. You can do a great guided meditation in that amount of time. You can answer one journaling prompt, and there's all kinds of books and resources with journaling prompts out. And
Mm.
anybody that uses AI like ChatGPT, and if they're comfortable using it for this, you can describe a little bit about what's going on or as much as you want, right? And you can ask, give me 52 journaling prompts, and you could incorporate one of those in a week that you want to do. Or you can say, give me one journaling prompt for every day of the year to help me look at and move through this specific thing that I've been dealing with.
Mm.
And you could just feed it. Maybe it's that you're really angry or you have a lot of rage. Have 365 journaling prompts that are created for you literally in probably 60 seconds or less that you can use every single day to help you sort through where that anger and rage is coming from.
It's interesting you've touched upon technology, and so we've got dual things happening with the technological sort of boom, if you like. It steals a lot of our precious mind time, but equally, there are great resources that we can lean into that help support our lives and our journey and our clarity. And so a lot of people are device heavy. We're running away, we're doing dissociative things, we're doom scrolling, whatever it is. And there's a lot of noise, and a lot of the energy then amplifies maybe the worry in you and so on, because you see all of the stuff going on. And I think in this modern time we live in, coming into a space where we're not distracted and we get a chance to just come home 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. We're thirsty for that. Humanity needs that more and more at this moment in time, because of the way the world has been set up to be bombarded with so much information. And our ancient brain is not equipped to always have the bullshit meter on, you know? And so our brain is going like a sponge, taking on board all sorts of stuff, propaganda, this, that, all sorts of things going on. And we're reacting to it as if it's always true. And it's not always true. And the thing is, when we come into silence and we check in with ourselves, we start to look at then what is the truth for me? What are the immediate things that I have control over? Because you don't have control over things that are outside your space, but you do have control over the immediate relationships you're having around you, and especially the relationship you're having with yourself. And I think that's where the coaching process, or that real work is important, to create proper space. And when someone books in for an hour with a counselor or a therapist of some kind, that hour is very sacred, because they might not have had a full hour, non-interrupted, to process the stuff that they've been carrying for so many years. They've been like
Absolutely.
their time and attention's been stolen. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, because it just reminds me, we do live in this very interesting time where the chat GPT can be really great as a resource, but there's some other technologies and other things that can really steal our time.
Absolutely. There is another example of how I use it. Now, I am somebody who, when I'm digging into an emotion that I'm having and why I'm having it, I like to sit with it first, with me in silence and with pen and paper, and really kind of sort through it and get into it. But if there's something I'm like, I can't quite see the blind spot here, right? Because we're too close to it. And let's say I don't have an appointment scheduled in the near future with somebody that I trust, that I can speak to it about. I will go on to ChatGPT at times and give it the scenario, give it what I have figured out about my own feelings and how far I've gotten it. And then I will ask it, and in the prompt, I'll say, don't just tell me what I want to hear. There's a blind spot here that I'm having a hard time seeing. Please help reflect this back to me. And so just seeing it in the text reflected back, then what I've recognized is most of the time you go, oh, yeah, I hadn't seen it like that. And then you can go sit with your pen and paper again and write about that new piece of information that you have. So I agree. I think technology is here to stay, and it's going to get really fast. And the way that we work with AI in our day to day lives and in our homes and in our work is going to drastically shift how we are productive. But I don't think it's going to bypass the emotional inner work we still have to do.
Mm. Yeah. We're still souls at the end of the day. We can be in the flashiest house with all the gadgets and still be miserable. Technology is not going to magic that away. We've got to do the real work on the inside, eh?
Yeah, and I think we know if we're not happy, we know. We can see how if we're really just kind of paying attention to what we're saying and what we're doing, we can tell around friends or family or our coworkers, like, what kind of mood are we in, what are we carting around that maybe isn't ours?
Mm,
And if we're feeling really tired or we're feeling like, gosh, I'm just carrying so much on my shoulders these days, then I think you'd be like the perfect candidate to sit down and do your own like self audit and self inventory. What am I carrying around that's no longer mine? What
mm,
is it that I should be saying no to that I'm currently saying yes to? And do I give myself permission to say no and
yeah.
to actually take more of my own time and power back?
Mm,
And I know that that can ruffle some feathers when I say things like that, because there will ultimately be people in the audience that'll say, "Oh, well, I can't stop doing this or I can't stop doing that. This person's counting on me and this person." That gets to be your choice. And I know there are things that are going to be harder to have a boundary with than other things, or priorities that can't shift that easily. But I think it's the old saying of like, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting.
yeah.
And so if you aren't making those shifts in some way, then you're probably going to keep feeling the way that you're feeling now as you listen to this until you make some shifts and changes.
Mm,
But a lot of people, frankly, at the end of the day, may feel like I can't make those changes because then this person or that person's going to be mad at me, upset with me, frustrated with me. That goes back to the core energy of approval.
mm.
You're seeking external validation for approval outside of yourself in some way. But I'm sure there's some minds that are being blown as they're listening to this, going, "Oh, I got to re-listen to this again," because there's all kinds of stuff in here.
Well, when we look at fear, okay, fear is a big roadblock. Fear of rejection, fear of not being approved of or acknowledged to be okay. Um, that can often sort of hold us back or stop us from being um, someone who's looking after our own interests. Also, people are saying, I don't want to be selfish. It's a very interesting thing. However, if you keep on sacrificing, you are depleting yourself, then what's that about? There needs to be a balance somewhere. If we think about approval comes right back to our basic instinct of having safety in a group. So if we're not part of that group, we might die, because in our ancient DNA, that's a reality. So we're very much primed to be part of that included group. Now, when we feel like we're going to be rejected in some way, it can feel like life and death. It's like, ooh, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. So when we're looking at, what am I fearing the most? And what if it wasn't even true? What if they weren't sort of that offended? Because sometimes people aren't. It's all about you in there. You think they're going to be offended. They might not be. Maybe they are. Well, that belongs to them, not necessarily you. So it's working out what you give back in the way of other people's responsibility to hold their own emotional well-being and balance, that you can't do that for them. But also, what are you doing that might be taking away your own personal balance?
Mm,
And so,
yeah.
what are the little tiny permissions that you start to give yourself that move you away from fear and into positive affirming action? So, yeah, I love the idea of, again, journaling and getting back into that self-reflection space. When I have a client, quite often I'll interrupt their story of belief by going, so far you've been doing that. What if you didn't? What would that be like? And so I think when people go to seek help, and they get those kind of questions coming their way, it sparks something new in the neuropathway space, you know? And I think when we want to change the old story and we want to build that new story beyond the fear, um, we've got to design it sometimes. We've got to contemplate it a little bit. Pros and cons of change, you know? We've got to move towards that. And I think that's what coaching does. It helps people, instead of that procrastination monster and that fear of change, it gives people possibilities of what change might be like. Let's try that on. You don't have to go live straight away, but let's imagine what that might be like.
Oh, it's so great. There's two books that come to mind of what you were just talking about. One, a lot of us have heard about, which is The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz. And there's a chapter on the agreement of not taking anything personally.
Mm.
And that one really has been one I've personally had to work through and I talk about regularly, with students and in content, because in my experience of it, if you can really heal the part of you that is looking for validation from other people, you're looking for that feedback, and you just come to a quiet confidence within yourself where you don't need that anymore, then you also find this liberation that you've probably never experienced before. And the chapter talks about not only taking the negative things personally, somebody criticizes you or says something bad about you or to you, but the chapter also says not to take anything good personally either, because both the good and the bad is through that person's own filter and life experiences and actually really has nothing to do with you. And so working through that. And then the other book that, with all the talk about journaling today, this practice, it's the book called The Artist's Way. Julia Cameron, I believe, is the author.
Yeah.
And there's a practice in the book called morning pages. And it's 3 pages. You get 3 blank pages every single morning. And there's no journaling prompt. And the exercise is that you fill all 3 pages and you don't stop writing until the 3 pages are full. And at first I thought, well, that's strange, because I always, use a prompt or I give other people prompts. When you sit with 3 blank pages and there isn't a prompt and you have to fill all 3 pages, it is absolutely incredible what will come out of you and onto those pages. And that has been one of the most profound shifts I've had with journaling ever.
Interesting. It's fascinating what is waiting in the background to come out. Quite often we might feel this uneasiness, or we can't quite settle. And that's because there's this inner part going, hey, when you're ready, can you just come and listen? Because I've got some really important things to share. And so when we do sit in stillness with that intention to fill, that's all we need often for that little part. I shouldn't say little, because it's not. It's a very big and important part of us. Our inner intuition, our inner knowingness, that bit that I like to call it the inner compass, actually, that part of us that knows who we are and what we're about. And it wants to support, it wants to guide. And that's often what will come through when you have those opportunities, right?
Yes. And not having strict guardrails on might actually help us dig up more,
Mm.
because if it's the one question that we're looking at for that day or that journaling time, that question might only lead us down one small pathway of our life or of our thinking. But when we approach it with, there's no question, it's just me. And you have to sit there long enough because you want to get the 3 pages done. I mean, let's be clear. So you're more likely to just, okay, what the heck's going on under the hood today? What's going on in the heart? What happened yesterday that I'm still thinking about? And you
Mm,
just start putting it out there. And it's amazing how your own words on blank pages will help you sort out so much, and maybe even more than what a question could give you. Now, I'm all for the right question at the right time.
mm,
But if you're trying to get in touch with yourself again or build a stronger relationship with you again, those 3 blank pages might be the most beautiful invitation you've had in a long time.
mm. Because the question itself can be an unconscious bias. Like it points towards something that took you away from the very thing that actually that little inner compass needed to tell you.
Exactly. So you could be looking at a list of prompts that all look really great and you just pick one. But yeah, it only gets you so far. Now, there'll be some days when you're using a journaling prompt and it will lead you to an answer you've never thought of before,
Mm,
or to get you to see something that you hadn't seen in a long time. But I think those are probably few and far between. And so, if you're really thinking, I want to liberate myself in a deeper way, you might want to do what the artist's way recommends and just have the 3 blank pages. She does say in the book, you do it every morning without excuse. And
mm,
so you have to schedule it in. And to give you an idea, depending on how quickly you write, it can take between 45 minutes and an hour. And so
mm,
you'd have to probably, prioritize your mornings if you're going to do it in the morning, just like the
mm.
name suggests. So you might have to get up earlier. But I would almost guarantee anybody that set out on that path and did that exercise every morning, I think within a matter of 7, 14, 21 days, and I have chills going up through my whole body as I say that. So it's like by the time you get through these first few weeks of it, I imagine that there will be much, much that has shifted inside of you.
Mm, absolutely. On that note, look, I want to really thank you for coming onto the talk time and having a chat with me about how you work and some of these ideas around relationships and how we can maybe get past the judgment and and all of those other things. These are hopefully seeds for people out there to start to grow curiosity around. You know.
Absolutely. And I invite your audience to come and join me for the content I put out for the Curious Question, which is on Tuesdays, and Books That Shift Us. Again, they're just 1 minute each. The books one comes out on Thursdays, US time.
Mhm.
So you probably would see that when you get up Wednesday and Friday mornings if you're in different parts of the world. But I just invite you to try to lean into some of those questions or that content and see what comes up for you. That's why I create it, and I welcome you into my circle, and I hope my questions spark some curiosity inside of you.
Nice, thank you. I will put the links to Delisa's website and that you can kind of easily find and navigate your way there. Again, thank you very much for your time. Um, it's been a pleasure to have you on board here.
It's been a beautiful experience. I enjoyed the conversation, and thank you for having me.
So, if you're interested in becoming a clinical hypnotherapist, you can visit the nzach.ac.nz and find out more about the diploma course. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's talk time. I hope you found it interesting. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel if this is your sort of thing. And I'll see you again for another talk time next week. Bye for now.